Alrighty then. Well, this is my subwoofer crossover that I made. It needs a lot of work yet, but it's been working for some time. I originally made this and put it in a little tiny box that overheated, so I put it in this old Carver phase linear 1000 box. So in here we've got the transformers and the couple of capacitors and the bridge rectifiers. This here is the power supply. If anybody's interested in how to do these things, just let me know. I'll be glad to put schematics and things up if you want. This is the power supply, which is plus and minus 15 volts because it's powering an INI 5532. I don't know if it's INI, I don't know if it's I don't remember the brand, but anyway, they're legitimate ones. And there's an interesting thing about this is I tried it as an experiment and it worked just fine. So instead of having a positive and negative voltage regulator, I have two LM317s, I think they are, adjustable voltage regulators. I tied the positive of one and the negative of the one together and made that our neutral ground, so I get a positive and a negative voltage across the two from ground. So it turned out hooking up two positive voltage regulators that way worked just fine. And this is my little crossover circuit. This is a low pass filter which goes for about 40 hertz. Right over here I've got some switches here with some resistors which are hooked in to switch a crossover point, but I'm going to replace those with a pot today. Also, I got these little tiny boards, and I put that in as an input buffer yesterday. This little guy right down here, can we even see that? Let me get some light in there. Yeah, well, from this angle it's a little hard to see, and I don't have my bifocals in, but I have another one that's intact here, but it sells as just a little board, and you put your 5532 chip in, and this makes a great input buffer. These things have a gain of 3, which I figured would be just right to drive my volume level pot here. So I had to put this to shield the power supply because it was putting some 60 hertz hum through. My shielding on these isn't so good, so my cables I've got here I'm going to replace with something better and better shielded. And then my output here, I've got one jack which actually is attached to the metal case, but I'm going to buy a jack and replace that so that nothing is grounded to the metal case, and I'm going to ground the metal case. I'm going to put a grounding screw on it and hook it up with a ground wire just to keep everything nice and clean on the inside. This is how I just insulated the power wires coming up, and this is all the insulating piece here is all done with metal foil tape. And even though it's just my transformers and a couple of bridge rectifiers in here, I put some holes in the top just to let some air out. This will stop almost all the RF. So by the time I get that done and get my new cables put on there, we shouldn't have any more issues. The transformers are just two small transformers connected end to end, two 12-volt transformers connected up together. They're putting out positive and negative, or I say 12, but they're actually about 14-volt transformers. So I'm getting a little under 15 volts, like 14.8 or something out. So but if anybody's curious about how to actually construct those things or whatever, I can gladly go through that. Just leave me a comment if that's what you want to know. I'm sure you won't have any trouble finding the information on the internet, though. It works really well, and when I find my other little board, those little boards were like 2 for $8, and they work just great. they're simple enough. There's nothing to them. There's no input or output capacitors needed, so there are none on the board. It does include two decoupling capacitors, and the gain could be changed if you wanted to change the resistors. For me, this is just fine. I'm going to put one as an output buffer also eventually, and we'll see how that works. But I just wondered if everybody might want to see this, since I haven't been posted many videos lately, and was curious about how you might put one of yours together in a prefabricated chassis. I could straighten some more wires out and things. This wasn't made to be pretty, it was made to be used. I made it to put together as fast as I could to get it in use for my subwoofer. So now I'm going back and fixing it a little bit. I had managed to stuff all this in one tiny little box, and it was great. It was a little tiny little thing, and it worked just wonderfully until one day I started driving that subwoofer too hard, and it overheated, and the chip got hot, and it started flatlining and clipping. So yeah, I had to go to a bigger case to prevent that, to get more airflow. You know, the little bitty case had lots of airflow and openings in it, but it was just all too compressed together. Couldn't handle it. So watch out for that. If you build one of these things, don't put them in too small a case. You'll have some issues. Okay, so here's kind of a final look at our thing here. Seems to be a little bit flashing from the 60 hertz. I'm not sure why. So right here, we've got our input board now that we just put on. We put these little capacitors in here. These are gold and copper foil capacitors, and the value wasn't quite right. I needed a little higher value than they had, so they're bypassed with a couple of standard little polypropylene film caps. Of course, here's our power supply transformers under the shield. We've got our power supply unit here. Got a fuse over here in the corner. We've got our actual low-pass filter unit that we built here, homemade on a perf board, so nothing too fancy looking. We put our output board over here. So putting these boards right next to the inputs and outputs helps reduce hum, especially this input board, and that's why we've lifted our cable here up above, because it's going over the top of our power supply board and lifting it up above there. So we've totally eliminated all the hum in the system this way. So we've added our pot. We've now got a pot on the front here. Unfortunately, the same knob doesn't fit, but that's our crossover frequency. So we just added that. So that's about it. I think we're about done with this. If you have any other questions about it, let me know. I'll be glad to fill you in. Just one last quick little follow-up. I put these Tiffany style jacks on, which isolated the circuit from the case, and to my surprise I found a big increase in treble quality and in treble. It sounded as if the treble had increased substantially, and it seems to have been not as much the jacks, I think, partially the jacks, but to a large extent getting the chassis out of the circuit, which was originally, the chassis was originally tied to the ground, and now it's separately grounded, so that cleared up the sound a bit more, made things just a bit nicer, and made the treble a little cleaner. Because I'm passing the treble through, by the way.